Okay, so next topic I wanted to cover is Git, right? Now, Git is generally used for as a source code management tool, right? Or it's also known as SCM. It's basically a repository where you can commit, push, or sync up your code with other team members, right? So it is an open source distributed version control system. So basically it maintains all the versions of your code in a central repository. It can be used to track any changes in any set of files in your project, right? Some of the basic Git commands are these, right, which we use on a regular basis. Now, there is also integration present in IDEs through where you don't need to use this commands, but it is good to know how to use Git when you are working on a command line tool rather than a UI tool, right? So the first command, git init, it is to create a new local repository, right? So whenever you want to check in any particular code into a Git repository, first you need to convert your local project into a new local repository. That you can do using git init. It basically initializes Git and basically initializes your folder as a Git local repository, right? So it creates a .git file in your folder. The next command is git clone, and then you pass the path to repository. So this is basically to clone any particular repository. So any existing repository which is present in Git or GitHub, you can clone it, basically create a copy of that repository in your local or check out that repository using this git clone command. Okay. Um, Next is git add, right? So either you can add a single file or you can add all the files using this all command, right? You can also git add write star. If you write star, it will add all the files into the staging phase of the repository, right? So it won't be added or committed into the actual repository. It is just a staging where it is maintaining all these files. Okay. Then how to commit the changes which you have added in the previous step. So you can use git commit, right? If you want to pass a commit message, you have to use this parameter -m. Right after this, you can pass the commit message. Now, this is important if you are trying to, if you're working in a team and if everyone is committing changes, there should be some commit message, proper commit message, so that you are able to identify which change is related to which particular, say for example, issue or any particular code change which you are doing, right? So this commit changes to your local repository. Then there is git push origin master, right? So the git push command, which is used to push the changes to the master branch of the remote repository. So there is a local repository and there is a remote repository. And once you commit the changes into local repository, you have to push it to the remote repository. For that, you can use this git push command, right? When you specify origin as master, it will push the changes to the master branch. Okay. Then there are some other commands like get status. So this will give you all the changes which you have made in all the files. It will show you all the files which are changed and which have not been committed into the repository. Okay. Also, before you push code into a remote repository, you need to add that remote repository server into your Git. Okay, so that you can do using git remote add origin and followed by the server. Okay, so that server could be the branch name as well. Okay, so it connects you to a remote repository. So without that, you cannot push it into a remote repository. Okay, then some other examples like get pull. So this will basically fetch and merge all the changes which are not on your local. Okay, so it will pull all the changes from the remote repository into a working directory. Okay, so which is your local repository. So when your remote repository and your local repository goes out of sync, which means you have not pulled changes from a long time, you can use this git pull, and it will pull all the changes, and it will also merge all the changes into your local repository. Considering there are no conflicts. Okay, so if there are conflicts, then it will not merge the changes, it will fetch the changes, but then it will do a comparison of the changes on the remote and the local, and if there are any conflicts, it will show it right away. Now if you want to do a diff of any conflicts which are occurring, right, so you can use the git diff command. It will show you the difference between your local and the remote repository, what changes are not matching, right, which cannot be merged. And then also if you have made some changes, right, and if you want to undo that, so that for that you can use the git reset command. And there is a hard reset, there is a soft reset also. So in hard reset, it will reset all the changes. So whatever changes you have made into the master branch, it will reset those changes. It will go back to a particular, say a change ID where you were on the last commit. Okay, so it will reset everything before that. So these are some of the basic commands which you can use. Now, where do you use this, right? So how do you set up your Git command line, or which is also known as Git bash on your local, right? Where you can use these commands. So for that, um, you have to install a software called Git bash, right? So if you go to this particular site, you will find the downloads for all the different systems, Windows, Mac, Linux. Just click on it, and this is the latest version, so download it for Windows. Once you download it, I have already done that, so you can search for Git bash in your Windows machine. So this is the Git command line for your any GitHub repository or any Git repository. Okay, so it's similar to your command prompt, but it is integrated with Git. So you can use all the Git commands here. Okay, so say for example, And when you do a git add, so it will automatically exclude those files. So if I do a git add all, right, so it will add all the files. Now if I do a status, right, git status, you will see no commits yet. We are on branch master, changes to be committed, so it is showing all the files which needs to be committed. And if you see, it has not included those folders and files which I have asked it to exclude. Right, so these are all on the staging phase now. So ready to be committed. So the next step is to commit, right? So you can say get commit m, and I can say initial commit, right? So this is my message. And once I do, it will commit all the changes into my local repository. Still, it is not into your remote repository. Okay. Now let's go back here. And so this is the repository URL, right? So there is a HTTPS and there is a SSH as well. We haven't set up SSH till now, so we'll use the HTTPS. You can also copy the command. So basically we are trying to add our remote repository to our Git, right? Git project. So for this, we need to run this command. So git remote add origin, and in this, the remote URL. Okay. So once I run this, it will add that remote repository to our Git. Now, if you want to check, you can, and say get remote dash v. So that will show you what origins are present or which remote repositories are associated with your Git project, right? So this is the URL which is present as origin, and we can do a push, we can do a fetch from this repository. Okay. Once that is done, we can push our changes to the master branch, which is the remote repository. Okay, so for that, you can say git push u origin master. Okay, so it will ask for the GitHub login. So this is because we are using a HTTPS URL. Okay, so if it would have been SSH, it would not ask for this particular login. So let me see if I remember. Okay, so it took the password now. So as you can see, now it is writing the objects, whatever we have pushed, the changes, resolving all the deltas, and then it is creating the new local branch master, and it is pushing to the remote branch, which is master. Okay, now the very simple way to verify is once you refresh this page, you can see your project is created here. Okay, so this is how it looks like in your GitHub. Now, this particular local project is linked to my source code management GitHub branch. So whatever changes now I make into my local, that I can push into my remote branch. Okay, so that is how both will be in sync. If something changes here, if somebody else commits here, I can also do a pull, right? So git pull, and it will pull everything from the remote branch, which is not present in my local branch. So right now it is showing already up to date, but if there are any changes, it will pull those changes and it will merge it into my master local branch. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show is how to set up a SSH agent for our Git or SSH key and add it to the GitHub repository so that we can use the SSH. Okay, so this is the page where you can find the information on how to set up SSH on your local machine, right? So it's basically a kind of authentication mechanism through which it can authenticate without providing the username password every time. And this is the way you use it in your organizations. You don't generally enter username and password for your Git projects or Git repositories. You set up a SSH key and then you add it into your project. Okay. So generating is just running these commands. Okay. So you can go to a command prompt. If it is integrated here, or we can also do it in Git Bash. So let's do it here only. If you're working on a Linux Mac, you can also do it in command prompt. In Windows, you may have to do it in Git Bash. Okay, so it will generate this key pair. It will ask where you want to store this particular file. The default location is in your profile.ssh folder. So just hit enter. And then if you want to enter any passphrase, but generally I don't prefer entering passphrase. Otherwise, every time it will again ask for passwords, right? So you can just bypass this by just hitting enter and enter. Okay, so it will create SSH key for you. It will create a private key and a public key. So it's a key pair kind of thing. Okay, so these are all the steps which is also shown here. And then the next step is to add your SSH key to the SSH agent, right? Which is our GitHub repository. So, okay, here is the steps for adding it to GitHub account. Okay, so you can copy that particular key which is present there. Okay, so run this command clip, which is basically it will copy the public key from your .ssh folder. Okay, so this is the public key. Once it is copied, it is shown here, whatever I showed you earlier, that path. And here you can just give any title and paste it here. So you can put after you generate that key and copy it. I mean, you can manually copy it or using that command also, right? That clip command. Once you copy that public key, you can add it here with a title, add it in the key here and add SSH key. It will ask you for your GitHub password. That is only the initial time. Okay, so all your SSH keys will be displayed here. You can also delete it and add a new SSH key. Okay, so whenever you push or create a new repository, So instead of using the HTTPS URL, right? So when we are adding a remote add URL like this, here we have used the HTTPS URL. But if you want to go through the SSH mechanism, you can add origin and then use the SSH URL instead of HTTPS URL. Okay. So it's the similar way. Go to your repository. Um, yeah, go to your repository and there you will find this code button, right? So it's basically, it will show you all the URLs through which you can clone this particular repository. So this is the HTTPS URL which we have used. There is also a SSH URL. So just copy this, okay, and then use it while you are adding it into your remote origin. So use that SSH URL. Once you do that, then when you push, it will use the SSH key instead of the username password, which is the basic credentials. Okay. So this is how you use Git. Okay. The other thing which I can show is, so once you make it a Git project, right? So Git integration is already available in IntelliJ IDE. Okay. So all the commands which we saw in the Git bash, it is also available here. Okay. So you can create a new branch, you can merge, you can push, pull, fetch, you can commit, add your file. So everything you can do it from the IDE also if the integration is present. Okay. But I generally prefer it from Git bash. That way I am aware of all the commands and it shows me all the logs if there is any problem. But if you don't prefer the Git bash, entering commands on your own, you can also do it this way. Okay, so you can also update your project. So it's pretty easy to manage it from here as well, or here as well.